Now, the Australian Human Rights Commission has a bit of a fight on its hands. The federal government is planning to amend Section 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act, the clause that prevents people being offended or insulted on the grounds of race.
But the Commission itself is far from united on the issue, with the new Human Rights Commissioner Tim Wilson pushing for a full repeal of that clause. Tim Soutphommasane is the Race Discrimination Commissioner. He joins us now. Tim, good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael.
What concerns do you have with any move to either repeal or substantially change this section of the Act?
We need to be very cautious about our racial vilification laws. If there is to be any amendment to the existing law, it should not give licence to people to racially harass and abuse others. We know that society takes its cue from its political leadership. Our laws helps to set the tone for how we conduct our life in society. What we don't want to do is to encourage people to think that racial vilification is acceptable and to encourage freedom without responsibility.
How would it encourage? In a speech you'll give tonight, you go as far as saying it could licence racial hatred, any changes to this Act. How could it do so?
We know, for example, from significant social psychological research that when people racially abuse others in public, they do so believing that those around them in fact endorse or support their behaviour. That's one reason, for example, that our Racism It Stops With Me campaign tries to send a very strong message about the need to stand up and speak out against racism wherever it happens. Our laws should not stay silent about racism.
What do you say to your new colleague there in the Human Rights Commission, Tim Wilson? He argues, as you well know, that our freedoms are robust enough, Australian society is robust enough to allow, as he puts it, freedom of expression, which overrides this provision of the Act.
Well, we need to be very careful about how we talk about freedom of speech. It's one thing to say that you can fight bad speech, as it were, with good speech if you're a professional, well-educated person who enjoys the privileges of social power, but quite often it's the vulnerable who struggle to speak out. In fact, the consultation that we've done at the Human Rights Commission into how racism makes people feel points very clearly to the silencing effect of race hate talk when it happens. That's to say, those who are the targets of race hate speech often feel intimidated by hate speech and feel that they cannot exercise their freedom of speech in a manner that they otherwise would be able to do so. And I should add as well that the current laws do in fact provide plenty of room for free speech. Section 18C is accompanied by Section 18D, which provides free speech exemptions for anything that's done in the way of artistic expression, scientific debate, fair comment or fair reporting on a matter of public interest.
And there are provisions as well in the Act, I assume it is 18D, that allow for a defence of offensive language if it's done in good faith.
Correct. The requirements are that it's done reasonably and in good faith. And when we talk about offensive language, it's surprising in my view that so much attention is placed on this particular part of our law, which provides modest, though very important, protections against racial vilification. After all, there are all sorts of laws that prohibit offensive speech. Our standing orders in parliaments, for example, at the federal and state levels, prohibit offensive language. There are criminal summary offences provisions in state laws, which mean you can be imprisoned for using offensive language. We have defamation laws, which mean that you can pay six-figure damages for using offensive language. So if we are going to take a dim view of anything that may offend people, let's keep things into perspective.
And finally, Tim, does it worry you that the Human Rights Commission is far from united on this issue as the government sits down to seriously consider changes to this Act?
My views on this issue have been very clear since I started in my role 6 months ago. I've said on numerous occasions on the public record that we should have strong and effective protections against racial vilification. But I respect Tim Wilson's opinions as Human Rights Commissioner, and he knows where I stand. This is one issue where I welcome debate, and hopefully it will be a constructive debate because we're talking about two very fundamental interests here: freedom of speech, but also freedom from racial vilification.
Hopefully it will be constructive and not the alternative. Tim Soutphommasane, thank you so much for your time this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Michael.